Chairman.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chairman, and thanks for holding this open hearing to allow the committee to discuss in public the important work that the NSA does and some of the current challenges they face to keep up with national security threats against us. Director Rogers, welcome back before the committee. As we have discussed many times in closed sessions, NSA and Cyber Command are at the forefront of a number of major national security challenges and policy decisions. So I look forward to this discussion today. Before getting to the rest of my statement, I want to publicly praise the work the NSA has done in collecting intelligence that has enabled the rest of the government to identify and stop terrorist plots directed or inspired by the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant here in the homeland. This threat is by no means over, but there have been a number of important disruptions thanks to good intelligence and good law enforcement office work, and you figure in that in a major way, so thank you very much. As FBI Director Jim Comey noted in his testimony before our committee in July, and I quote, "The foreign terrorist now has direct access into the United States like never before," end quote. There are now more than 200 Americans who have traveled or attempted to travel to Syria to participate in the conflict, and that remains a significant concern. I'd appreciate your assessment of the ISIL threat and the threat to the United States from others as well. Of course, when discussing that threat, we also have to recognize, due in part to leaks of classified information, improved operational security by terrorist groups, and the availability of encrypted means of communications that cannot be collected, there is increasingly a limit on what NSA will be able to contribute. I know we'll have a chance to discuss that change. There are also numerous press reports in the past week or two suggesting that the administration is rethinking its support for any legislative solutions to this problem. We welcome your thoughts on how to approach the so-called going dark issue. And I think the more you can tell the public about it here today, the better. Certainly, the hack on the OPM database, as the chairman said, demonstrates the need for better protection of personal information. But I'd very much like to hear your views on whether this is an either-or situation, or if there's a way to keep private communications protected while still allowing the government to gain access to critical information when it's doing so pursuant to a court order or other appropriate legal process. As the head of one of the most technically proficient agencies in the government, your input into this question is very important. Next, while the committee has been following the implementation of the USA Freedom Act, today presents a good opportunity for the American public to hear how that transition is going. Under the new law, the NSA will no longer collect phone metadata directly from phone companies and conduct its own tailored queries of those data. Instead, the government will have to obtain a court order in order to ask telecommunications providers to query their own records and produce the responsive information. It's important, I think, for the public, as well as for us, to know whether this transition will be complete at the end of 180-day period, and whether you assess that the system is in place at that time, if you assess it will meet your operational needs. I'd also like to know whether this system, once fully in place, will achieve the goal of providing NSA with responsive information from a broader set of records than it had before the USA Freedom Act passed, or whether there will still be the relatively small percentage of phone records that were available to you before the change. Finally, you briefed the committee recently on the reorganization you're putting into place in the NSA. It would be appropriate at this hearing for you to describe that reorganization to the extent that you can, why it's needed, and what changes are being made. Again, thank you very much for the work your agency does. I've been very proud of it, and thank you for your leadership.